Growing up, I used to love to watch westerns on TV. At some point in every film, a dust-covered cowboy would come out of the blazing sun and walk into a dimly lit saloon, pausing only for a moment to let his eyes adjust to the light. He would carefully survey the occupants while slowly moseying across the floor. Throwing his lariat down on the bar, he would pause, and then in a loud voice say, "Whiskey!" Whether it was John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, Ward Bond, it made no difference. Thinking back, I don't ever recall any of them ever asking for it to be served in any special manner. It was just whiskey, and it always arrived the same way, neat and in a shot glass. Over time, the drinking of whiskey neat has evolved into a much more sophisticated endeavor, and while you can still drink it on the rocks or mixed in a cocktail, today we're going to discuss the basics involved in the drinking of whiskey neat. Ordering a drink neat simply means that the liquor is served alone at room temperature without any form of dilution. This is a sipping drink, one to be savored and mulled over. The reason for drinking a whiskey or any fine spirit for that matter at room temperature is because when you chill down a spirit, you tend to dull some of the subtle flavors and aromas that the distillers have worked so hard to achieve, and that in many cases you've paid big money to purchase and experience. It would really be a shame to miss them. The first thing we need to do is choose a glass. As we have already said, back in the day a shot of whiskey was served in a shot glass, or sometimes it was served in a rocks glass or tumbler, or in what is often referred to as an old school whiskey glass, like this. And while this glass will work just fine, heck, you could use a paper cup if you like, it is believed by many that if you really want to experience the full flavor of a whiskey, you need to use what is called a nosing glass. And although there are many different kinds of nosing glasses to choose from, and we will be exploring many of them in a future episode, today we have chosen a classic Glencairn whiskey glass. Note its basic shape. Wide bowl at the bottom that tapers up to a smaller opening at the top. The reason for this shape is so that the aromas can gather at the bottom and are then funneled up through the top, thus concentrating them. Why is this important? Because without smell, there is no taste. Subtle nuances that were undetectable with the old school whiskey glass became very apparent with the nosing glass. Now, I'm not saying that everyone should run out and buy nosing glasses, but at some point I think it worth the small investment to give them a try. Okay, let's pour out some whiskey. We are not going to be talking about any specific brands today, as we will leave those for another episode. But this method of tasting applies to them all. Like a fine wine, whiskey will benefit from exposure to the air. Let it breathe for a few minutes. Take the glass, swirl the liquid around. And no, this is not done just for show. This helps the air to mix with the whiskey and greatly aids in the evaporation process. This evaporation helps the whiskey release its full flavors and aromas. Remember, no evaporation, no aroma. No aroma, no taste. At this point, you might as well take note and enjoy the lovely color of the whiskey. I mean, since you're just sitting there swirling it around, right? Put your nose over the top of the glass and inhale deeply. Some of the aromas you might experience might be caramel, vanilla, toffee, honey, cherries, to name but a few. But please don't worry if you cannot distinguish between these. In truth, few people can. It takes years of training and practice to be able to distinguish all of the things that many so-called tasters can. What is most important is that you enjoy what you are smelling. I like to let the whiskey breathe for 3 to 5 minutes, depending on proof and age. I let the higher proof or older whiskeys breathe longer, as I feel they greatly benefit from this added time. You may notice subtle changes in aroma the longer it's exposed to the air. Now let's take a sip. Most will tell you to swirl the liquid around in your mouth for a moment or two before swallowing. This is done supposedly to help you taste the variety of things that you've just smelled. Others will say hold it on your tongue and suck in a wee bit of air through pursed lips. I think it's enough just to let the whiskey linger in your mouth for a few moments before swallowing. Here again, you may be aware of any number of different flavors, caramel, vanilla, toffee, etc., such as I've just mentioned. After swallowing, take note of the aftertaste you experience. At the 5 o'clock hour, we would suggest that all whiskeys, when tasted for the first time, be tried in this fashion before adding water, ice, or mixing them into a cocktail. This will give you a truer idea of what the whiskey you've just purchased is really all about. One word of caution here. Higher proof whiskeys can be quite strong, with some being as much as 70% alcohol. You may experience quite a burn when drinking them, and a higher proof spirit can actually numb your taste buds, doing you more harm than good. If you've never had whiskey neat before, I would recommend starting with a bottle that is somewhere between 80 and 90 proof maximum. One of the most common questions asked is whether or not one should add water to whiskey. Now, some feel that to add water is to destroy what the distiller has attempted to create. But I think most people will tell you that by adding a few drops of water, especially to higher proof whiskeys, you will help open them up and bring out subtle flavors that otherwise might remain trapped. I believe that experimentation is the only real way to find out what works best for you. And really, isn't that where all the fun lies? It's alive! So please, join us each week as the 5 o'clock hour explores the history, the rituals, the gadgets and gizmos, the techniques, the recipes, the food, the drink, and all of the other wonderful and interesting things that make up this truly unique institution that we here call the 5 o'clock hour. Or visit us anytime at the5o'clockhour.com. And please remember, enjoy the 5 o'clock hour responsibly. Until we meet again, cheers.